Okay, so to start off with this Loe Shimmy sample, I'm gonna go over the chord progression first while I'm play the chord progression for y'all. And this is how it sounds. And the scale that I made this melody in is G sharp minor. Now with this first instrument that I started with was the Labs piano, the soft piano. And I just played how it sounds, and these are the effects that I have on it. First things first is a Valhalla Vintage Verb, a Fruity Flangus. I turned down the mix, a UAD Galaxy tape echo, and I used the behind the vocal delay preset, and I is the stock preset. I ain't really changed nothing. And a CLA compressor, right? The reason why I use the compressor is because I lowered the velocity within the piano roll, so the notes are extra quiet. Without the compressor to raise up the volume, it sounds like this. You can barely hear it. Well, for one, I could boost up the gain by going here and turning up the master, but that'll mess up the piano sample sound. So I use a compressor to boost it up while having the notes not peak, if you get what I'm saying. The next instrument I went on to was a Rhodes. And the reason why I went on to a Rhodes is because primarily Loe Shimmy samples have Rhodes in them, and they're very smooth and they don't take up a lot of space either. The effects I have on this is a Valhalla Vintage Verb, a Fruity EQ to take out some of the highs. Without the EQ, it sounds like this. And I did not like that clicky sound. So I used the EQ to EQ out the highs because that's primarily where the frequencies were. So I EQ'd them out. And I also use a delay as well, the tape echo, and I use the Sunday vocal preset. And this is the default preset that I just used now when searching. And that's when I clicked through them and I like this one. Now I added an image stereo to make it wider within your ears. And what this do is it just makes it wider. It's like a stereo shaper. It's like a stereo enhancer, and it makes the sound wider. So you mess with this knob to just tweak it. And I went a little experimenty on this sample, and I was just playing around, and I used this plugin in a little bit. So I said, let me just try it out. So I went ahead and I was playing around, and I landed on this slight crisp preset, and I messed with the noise, turned it down a little bit, and I ended up liking how it sounded, so I left it. The next instrument is this analog lab. For this one, it's from a kit I bought, and the name is the name is Private Sounds, and it's from Kyle Stemberger, if I'm remembering correctly. It's a very fire kit, and he has these kind of multi-keys type sound, these artifacty type sounds, and it sounds very fire. It was on sale for Black Friday, so I ended up buying it. And I have Fruity Flanger on this just to give it that flanges type aspect. I have a tape mellow with a subtle width preset, and I turned down the noise. I also have a Valhalla Vintage Verb for some reverb to give it some room. I turned up the low cut so that it wasn't too muddy or the reverb wasn't clashing. Now I also added this UAD Studio D chorus. Again, I was just feeling a little bit experimenty. I haven't used this plugin in a little bit, so I wanted to try it out. And it's a chorus plugin, so it sounds very good. And I was just testing it out, and then I landed on just the default preset. Next is this right here. It's this bell from Precarious Sounds. And without effects, let me see. Yeah, without effects, it sounds like this. This is dry bell. And with effects, I wanted it to give that little artifact type vibe. And then pull up the preset. This is a Doobie's Bell Dry. And I wanted to give it that little artifact type vibe, right? So I used the Fruity Illusion so that it's not playing the bell, but it's playing some artifact. If you hear it. Now, I added a Fruity Flangus to give it that flangus, that chorusy type aspect. And I also added a Hollow Room to make it sound more ambient. I turned up the low cut because it was clashing. And the reason why I didn't want it to be in your face and instead turn it into this little texture thing is because the melody had already had a lot going on, right? Because the sounds I'm about to introduce take up some frequencies where I didn't want the bell to be there and make it the main focus. Because when you have high frequencies mixed in with things that are low, the high frequencies tend to stand out, and I did not want the bell to be the main focus that people hear. Next is these lushful strings I got from Triton. And they're like strings mixed with a pad, and it's lush Anna strings. The effect that I have on here is a Valhalla Vintage Verb. Next thing is this vocal type thing I found on Splice. Right, and what I have on here is my preset, an EQ, another EQ, a vintage chorus, and turn down the mix, a Valhalla Vintage Verb, a Fruity Delay 2, turn down the mix as well, a Pan Man, and a Fruity Filter. I enjoyed that sound, so I ended up reversing it for this half right here. And as you heard in the beginning, it flows very well and it's a very nice sound. Next thing I have here is this lead. And what I did was I basically played that in, and I found this from the 90s R&B's Essential Bank, the Fusion lead. And what I basically did was this. And I just played that in, and then I went here, I did the same thing, and I just put this there. Next is the bass. And the reason why I made it so jumpy and groovy is because I did want to give it that basic bass pattern where it just followed the root notes. And I feel like it fits the vibe and it fits the aesthetic I was going for. So I just left it like that. Next, I went ahead and found this saxophone from Splice and I chopped it up. And what I have on here is my preset I showed y'all from before. EQ, another EQ, vintage chorus, Valhalla Vintage Verb, Fruity Delay 2, Pan Man, and a Fruity Filter. Now the next instrument I have is this thing I found from Splice and I chopped it up. And the effects I have on here is a Valhalla Vintage Verb, a Fruity Flangus, and a Fruity Love Filter, just so you give it that accent vibe. And with these melodies, you don't have to make them complicated, but you have to make them stand out. And by making them stand out is by having a accent that can pique your interest, or by having different fillers within the melody. You don't have to have anything going on too crazy. Keep them simple, but just by adding accents like textures from the waves or atmospheric sounds, it fits the vibe and it makes it sound very fire. Now I also have this right here. this little laser thing. And why I added on here was actually nothing, because they already had that ambient aspect and that reverb that it had. But I found this in one of J6 Jacob Sick kits, and it was very fire. And if you're wondering what these are, that's up here was just some vocals that I was trying out, including these. This was a choir I was trying out, but I didn't end up liking how it sound. But just to fulfill y'all curiosity, I know some of y'all would be asking in the comments. I'll play a little bit of it to show y'all how it sounded and why I didn't like it. Right, it don't sound bad, but it just wasn't fitting the vibe that I was going for. I also found this perk loop for one of his kits. Now what I have on here is my perk loop preset, and it contains a Fruity Delay 3, a Fruity Reverb 2, lowered the mix on both of those, and a Fruity Pancake, a Fruity Flanger, and a Fruity Filter. Next thing we have is my favorite thing, you know, the vibes. Same thing I use as always, this little guitar electric thing. Now what I have on here is a pancake, left to right shy, and I just move the things a little bit. And I have a reverb from Rome, and I'm using the Arcadia Dream Hall. And I mess with the mix a little bit and I put it up. But yeah, that's practically all for this sample. I thank you guys for watching, and if you guys learned something, let me know. Loe Shimmy melodies are not really that complicated. All you got to get down is the chord progression and the sounds, right? And you can get that down by listening to his songs and his albums. And with this vibe in particular, I was going for that more so ambient style because I was inspired by 3 a.m. But I leaned towards the emotional aspect a lot more. So with these melodies, all you got to get down is the chord progression, and you got to keep them very simple. So yeah, that's practically all for the tutorial. I'm glad you guys joined in today, and I love y'all, and I appreciate y'all, and I'll see y'all Wednesday.